Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Aaron Trevino here, and we have another wonderful guest. We have Joshua Ferrari from Mobile, Alabama. How you doing, Joshua?
Doing good, man. Stoked. We just closed another deal yesterday and we got another one under contract. So I'm excited for what's in store as well as getting out of this rat race.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw that. As we spoke about, I saw that on social media, and it's a great accomplishment. So congratulations.
Thank you very much, man. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, Joshua. So for those of us who aren't too familiar with you, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, so Josh Ferrari. No, I don't own a Ferrari, but I am Italian, and the goal is one day to own one. So now that that's out of the way, I moved to Mobile, Alabama from Memphis, Tennessee, about 3.5 years ago. Actually got started investing inside of real estate 3 years ago. Moved down here to start what I thought was going to be a long-standing career in aircraft maintenance as an aircraft technician, which I still am, still working that full-time gig. But eventually, kind of, we're still in the process of transitioning out of that, going full-time to real estate. So I initially got into wholesaling. My dad called me up one day and told me, "Hey, your mom and I are going to start flipping houses." I was like, "What the flipping houses? You guys aren't wealthy. Like, where is this coming from? Why real estate?" And I just had all these questions. And so after like a 4 hour conversation, my interest was piqued in the fact that I could make more than my annual salary, in just like a few months, like one deal. And that would open up so many other opportunities from not having to work a W-2 and realizing that that was even possible for me at the age of 21 at that time, thinking that holy cow, I could get out of this like corporate America lifestyle and live completely on my own terms as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. So I dove into education, dove into reading books, listening to podcasts, went to three separate real estate investor meetups here in the Gulf Coast area, and ended up getting into wholesaling. Did that for about 5 to 6 months. Didn't really like it. We probably spent about 10 grand on marketing throughout the time frame. We didn't even close one deal. We had like 7 or 8 deals that we actually got under contract to have an end buyer purchase, but we, for whatever reason, couldn't do it. So the whole purpose of the wholesaling was to kind of build the capital stack and gain a little bit of experience along the way so that we could eventually buy, because we liked the lifestyle and the strategy of buy and hold. So we were like, all right, let's just save the money that we do have and that we are making from our jobs, and let's buy something. So about 2 months later, we bought a fourplex, house hacked it, and syndicated it. And these words syndicate lightly because it was just me calling my dad up and telling him, hey, we got this cool fourplex for looking at, flip and house hack. And, what do you think about throwing the down payment my way and I'll give you a piece of equity? And he was like, sure. So that's kind of how we structured that, got into that, and really did like everything on our own on this deal. I mean, it's the most massive learning curve I've had since I've been in real estate. I mean, we were the realtors, we were the contractors, we were the property managers, the plumber, the electrician, everything. It was ridiculous, but it was good experience, I guess you could say. I learned a lot of things the hard way, which I don't necessarily recommend, but it allowed me to pivot from so many different angles. Like, okay, now I know what to do. Now I know what not to do. Now I know what maybe I need to streamline. Now I know what I actually enjoy doing. And flipping and house hacking a fourplex was not really what I enjoyed doing. So I, after about 6 months of having purchased that and continuing to educate myself in podcasts and reading books and meeting people, I found larger multifamily and kind of the power of doing larger deals. And then I found the niche of syndication, like the actual avenue through syndication that I could do larger multifamily. I'm like, this is amazing. This is what I need to be doing. So then fast forward to today, I now have two other business partners. We've closed a 21 unit single family portfolio, a 42 unit apartment complex, a 34 unit apartment complex, and we just got another 88 units under contract, and a high-end beach flip, which is completely one-off, but it's just a quick little nice capital gain here so that we can continue funneling that into multifamily.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's definitely a heck of a story, Josh. And it's interesting how you're kind of making it sound like a lot of your biggest learning lessons from when you were spread really thin, kind of trying to do it all.
Yeah, trying to do, and that wasn't even the plan. The initial plan going into the fourplex, we had all these contractors lined up. I had a GC lined up. We were doing a 203K FHA loans. We thought we had all the renovation money lined up. We thought we were good to go. We had everything. And then everything just kind of fell apart. We did like one unit at a time. So we were living in the one that was like most livable, but was still really crummy. And it was a 100-year-old house, and there was no AC, and there was like cockroaches everywhere, and it was rough. It was really, really rough. But we were renovating the unit that we were going to live in, which was going to be the smallest at the time, with the initial contractor we got, and they doubled the budget and tripled the timeline. So it was like, obviously, we cannot be keeping these contractors. So we begun the process of firing them, but we had to do it all through the FHA program. And so it literally took 5 months, 5 whole months between firing them and hiring the new contractor, which we already had lined up before we started the process of firing the first one. But FHA would not let the new contractor touch the property for 5 months until they finished the paperwork. So during those 5 months, I was like, there is zero chance that I'm going to let this property just sit dead in the water. And so if I can fix an airplane, I can fix a house. Like, I'll just figure it out. I'll go to YouTube University and we'll figure this thing out. And so the plan initially wasn't to do really any of those things except property management on our own. And it just kind of came to be that we needed to be the jack of all trades to get the job done.
Absolutely. It definitely sounds like you got that PhD from YouTube University.
Literally.
Now, I'm curious as well. Is one thing that I'm curious about you is kind of your mindset, right? So to me, maybe growing up, not even around real estate, not even accustomed to hearing about it, to having that W-2 job, to now transitioning to this new world of multifamily. What sort of maybe mindset shifts have you tried to make adjusting to that?
Man, the mindset's everything. And from the get-go, from that initial conversation with my parents that night, 3+ years ago at this point, that was the initial shift. That was the initial idea implanted in my head that maybe this is a possibility. Maybe I could not work a W-2. Maybe real estate could be for me. And then the continual education along the way. And every time I learned something new, like learning that you can, from that conversation, learning you can flip houses, and then, reading a book or listening to a podcast and someone tells me seller financing is an option to flip a house. It's like, well, dang, maybe this is possible for me because I didn't have any money at the time. And then learning something else about, multifamily, and that you can go even bigger, but maybe multifamily that I learned at first was 2, 3, 4 units, what I thought was possible. So, okay, that's really cool. Yeah, I can house hack that. Learning what house hacking was, realizing I could buy something. And every new piece of education I learned along the way continued to change my mindset on what was possible. And honestly, I think every day I'm learning something new and my mindset shifts again, because we just had our what we call our vivid vision call with the three of us, the three GPs, are kind of our team. I think it was Monday. What's today? No, it was Friday of last week. So a few days ago, for whenever this releases. And talking on the phone, or actually it was a Zoom call, discussing where we plan on heading, where we see the vision of the company, where we see the vision of like ourselves, what we want it to look like when we get there, how we want to, what exactly we want to do to get there, and just really diving, like not just creating a vision, because you hear a lot of people create like a vision statement or something that they're all about. And this is the vivid vision. This is extremely vivid detail on what it's going to look like, what the work week's going to look like, how we're going to be operating, who we're going to be hiring, why we're going to be hiring them, like all kinds of things. So really diving into the like deep work into what that's going to look like. So we're having this conversation and I was like, okay, here's my vision. Here's where I see us headed. I see us reaching $50 million assets under management within the next 3 years. And I'm thinking that's big. You know, we've got like 4 million now. I'm like 50 million. You know, I see us fully achieving that within a 3-year time frame. And then one of my partners is like, well, wait a second, why are we only shooting for 50 million? I'm like, what do you mean? Because I'm thinking this is going to be difficult to achieve. You know, my mindset is thinking, I guess, small in terms of what he was thinking. And he was like, no, bro, we can easily hit 200 million assets under management like in 3 years. I'm like, holy, how are we going to do that? So then diving into that conversation and realizing where he was coming from and where kind of a lot of those economies of scale were going to come from, is like, maybe that is possible. Like, shoot, who knew? Like, I was not thinking that big. You may need to think bigger. And so I think every day I'm learning something new and my mindset continues to shift. And I think having an open mind and being able to shift your mindset kind of in the direction that you want to head, I think that'll be huge for any investor or any human's success, even if you're not interested in real estate investing.
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. It kind of sounds like it's a story of, just getting those reps in, right? Whether it's, listening to a podcast, watching, going to YouTube University, or even just penciling something out, at the dinner table. It sounds like that kind of really, compounded for you and ended up with a good result.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, and I think it's just extremely important overall. The mindset is huge. And if you guys haven't read the book Vivid Vision by Cameron Herold, I highly recommend you go check that out, because that is really what kind of sparked the whole thought process of where can we head and what will it look like. And we were just kind of thought we had the same ideas and the same direction that we were headed in, and we had talked about it over a Zoom call or like over lunch, just chatting normally, just chatting with friends, being like, yeah, this is kind of where I see us headed, this is kind of where we want to roll. But really, since we've been really diving deep into what we see it looking like, it's really awesome and eye-opening to see where they're coming from and where I'm coming from, and where we all can kind of coexist and meet in the middle for where we're striving.
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. And I'm curious as well. You kind of mentioned, not really growing up in that real estate environment, just kind of, putting one foot in front of the other. This can, for someone who's not really familiar with the industry, you're stepping into a brand new world. It can be, scary for people. How can you, kind of even take that first step?
Yeah, I've actually been having a conversation with a 19-year-old. He's a student at where I work at my W-2 job as an aircraft technician down here in Mobile. He's just learning like how to get his A&P, how to work on planes. And naturally, I just so thoroughly enjoy real estate that it just kind of comes up in conversation every now and then. And so he starts asking me about it. I start telling him things, and his interest is piqued. He's extremely interested in learning more. But he's like, bro, I don't know where to start. I have no idea what the heck to even do. Like, how on earth would I even get to where you are? And I think it's just taking small incremental steps day by day, night by night, learning, meeting people, and continuing to grow your education on what's possible, on what you want to do, on where you want to head. And so I think going into real estate, figuring out, like, maybe you're listening to this for the first time and realizing that, holy cow, real estate investing is possible, and it could be possible for me. And that's the direction I want to head. And you're like, well, what do I do first? Well, a lot of people read Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's what a lot of people do to kind of shift the mindset and realize, holy cow, like this is huge. And then once reading that, he's got a bunch of other books like Cash Flow Quadrant. And then there's just a gazillion other books out there. Like I mentioned, Vivid Vision. And then a lot of the Bigger Pockets books are really awesome for continuing to grow your like how-to education and like how to do real estate. So I think reading books is massive. Talking to people that are already in the space. So figuring out, I know COVID's going on, but whenever meetups start back up, or getting on social media and figuring out where like virtual meetups are happening, talking to those people, creating a relationship with someone already in the space. They can kind of be your mentor and continue to tell you, what they do, and you can kind of learn from them. Or listening to podcasts like you're doing right now, listening to podcasts and listening to what other people are doing. For me, that was huge. Hearing, especially destroying limiting beliefs. Listening to podcasts was massive because I was, 21 at the time, didn't have any money, didn't really think I was going to be able to do anything. And listening to these podcasts and these stories of people that were even younger than me, like a 20-year-old, and then even a 19-year-old, or a 25-year-old or a 24-year-old, someone that's just a little older than me. I could really relate just because I felt like they kind of came from my same background. We were kind of the same age. And they're like, yeah, I've closed 200 units already, crushing it. Or I've did like 7 figures and like flipping houses last year. And just like, what on earth? How is that possible? And so talking to people like that, reaching out to folks like that, just taking that first step. I think there's a big myth in real estate of people telling you to take massive action. Go out there and just take massive action. You won't ever get anywhere if you just don't go take massive action. Well, who really takes massive action in anything? I mean, what person do you know that's never invested in real estate before that's going to go out tomorrow and buy 1,000 units all by themselves? Hardly anyone. I mean, it starts with making a phone call or watching a YouTube video or listening to a podcast or creating an account on BiggerPockets or reading a blog post. It starts with one tiny little baby step that you can do and then just continue taking those steps, continue pressing on, and don't give up. I mean, if there's one last piece of information I could give before I stop blabbing here, it would also be to just not give up, because it took me 2 years before I ever saw a dime of profit from my investing journey. And that was tough. That was tough to hear all these other stories and podcasts and read books and talk to people at local meetups and other people.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yeah, sorry. It cut out for probably the past 15 seconds.
Well, all I said was, I guess you can edit a lot of that out, but it is possible and you can do it.
All right. No, absolutely. No, it's interesting as well hearing about this because, I'm curious about how you'd mentioned how maybe those 2 years were kind of tough. You just kind of grinding, putting in the work. What made you continue and not get discouraged?
Man, that's a tough question. I guess knowing what was possible. I mean, it goes back to the mindset. And I think, like we were talking about earlier, the mindset is huge. So continuing to educate myself and talk with others that have been on the same journey or that have also struggled. And like I did actually have and do still have a mentor inside of multifamily syndication. So once I had met him, and begun talking to him about everything under the sun, every question you could possibly imagine, and asking him a similar question of, well, how long did it take you before you made any money? And how did you keep going? And how long did it take you before you really saw any success? And what do I need to be doing? And asking all those questions. He basically said the same thing that I'm saying now. And the fact that it took him a while, took him a few years to really start seeing any kind of profit from his syndications, multifamily investing that he was doing. But he had a ton of other friends that were flipping houses or buying single family homes or running a wholesaling business or whatever they were doing, outside of his niche. And they were doing extremely well for themselves. He's like, man, they're making 6 digits a year. They quit their W-2 like 2 years ago. They're doing phenomenal. And he's like, sometimes it was hard to see them have such extreme success. And then for me to be here struggling, continuing to grind on this process. But he kept telling himself, and I just had to keep telling myself that it's going to be worth it in the end. And seeing other syndicators have success and come from the same background and do a lot of the same things that we're doing, and then just following what they're doing, because there's not really a lot of ingenuity that's needed in real estate. I mean, maybe there's some more technology advances that we can input somewhere to make work life easier and workflows and communication, and maybe that's out there somewhere to add and benefit the real estate space. But as far as like negotiating with a seller, finding a deal, talking to a broker, creating a relationship with someone, getting to the closing table, like there's not really any new ingenuitive things that you can add in there. So just following what other people have done, like to a T even. I mean, you don't have to be some extraordinary individual, and you don't have to think, oh, well, I've got to set myself apart. I think a lot of people try to set themselves apart by doing some crazy odd and end thing that maybe isn't even their authentic self. And so maybe setting yourself apart should just be you being authentic, you just being you.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot to be said for that, Josh, especially, kind of people being influenced by social media. You don't really see the person, you kind of see the persona, right? You maybe see somebody that is taking a picture in front of a Ferrari, right? And maybe they don't own it.
Yeah, I've seen that plenty of times. And I've even seen some people make fun of it, which I think is hilarious. They take a picture in front of this random sports car, exotic car, and they're like, this is not mine.
I like that. I have not seen that, but I would definitely give that a like. No, absolutely. So, we've talked a bit about maybe, your beginning, kind of with airplanes, talking a bit about wholesaling, and not exactly growing up in the industry. And now you're kind of transitioning, now you're in multifamily. So could you kind of explain a bit about, what syndication is and, kind of what you do?
Yeah, so syndication is basically the pooling of funds from a group of people, depending on the type of syndication you're doing, just a group of individuals, and then you buy something, which for us is multifamily assets, apartments, mobile home parks. We don't actually own any mobile home parks right now. One of my partners does individually, but us as a team, we don't own any, but it is an asset class that we like. Primarily, we're focused on apartments right now. So syndication in a whole is just that. You find a deal. If you're looking to get into multifamily syndication anyway, specifically what we do, we find a deal. We do all of the underwriting, all of the due diligence. We have all of the relationships with the brokers and the lenders and the property managers and the investors and everyone that you need, the contractors, to put together a deal and execute on it. So we do all the due diligence. We put together an offering packet. We raise the money from these investors interested in getting a piece of the deal, and then, put on the webinar, do all this stuff. And then when we actually get to the closing table, then the real work begins, and we actually begin asset managing this property. If we're bringing on a new property manager, doing the property management transition, making sure all the tenants know what's coming, and that beginning CapEx, capital expenditures, which is, renovating interiors of units, whether that's like new countertops, new kitchen, updated bathrooms, new wall paint, whatever it is, adding amenities, doing those kinds of things so that we can do what's called forcing appreciation, which is something that you can actually do with multifamily as opposed to single family. So with single family, you say you buy a $200,000 house in a neighborhood where, all the houses are worth $200,000. Well, you could put $100,000, $200,000, $1 million worth of renovations into that house. It's never going to be worth more than the comps in that neighborhood. But with multifamily, it's directly correlated to the income that the property is actually producing. So if we can increase income or decrease expenses and increase our overall NOI, our net operating income, then that will actually boost up, depending on what your cap rate is, which we won't get into that. It's a little kind of confusing, but depending on what your cap rate is and your new NOI number, that adds value to your deal. Which, for example, I mean, we could put in, say, $200,000 worth of CapEx, worth of renovations into a particular property that we paid, say, $1.5 million for. And then when we're done with it, it could easily be worth like 2.2. We could easily have gained $500,000 quickly. And it's really tremendous. It's the economies of scale that we really enjoy inside of multifamily. Plus, with the deal we just closed, 34 units, it's like one horseshoe funky shaped building. And so we got 34 units underneath one roof. So we only have to get one roof replaced. The property manager only has to be in one location. We only have to cut one lawn. There's a lot of economies of scale when you're in one singular location. And so that's another thing we really enjoy with multifamily. But to kind of finish up on what we do, also the money raising aspect of it, that's a big portion, as well as the acquisition side of it is a big portion. And then the asset management, I guess, acquisitions, and raising money.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and you brought up a great point, kind of talking, drawing that distinction between maybe multifamily and just kind of a single family home, right? The single family home, it will generally, no matter what you do, it'll probably not go over the comps in the area versus, with multifamily, it's more, when you add the value, that will determine, it'll kind of show that things can be a bit different compared to a single family home.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was something mind blowing for me. When I first heard the term forcing appreciation, I'm like, it's not even possible. What the heck they talking about forcing appreciation? Because at the time, all I knew was standard appreciation was something that you kind of shouldn't bet on, because I only really knew it from the single family side of things, where you were kind of basing your expected or unexpected appreciation on whatever the market was doing. And so some people actually buy in highly appreciable markets because their goal is to count on appreciation. And I don't recommend that. But when I thought of appreciation, I thought, okay, so I'm just waiting on the market. Like, I'm going to put money into this, just like you see HGTV flippers do. And then I'm just going to wait on the market to turn, and that'll be it. Like, I was thinking basically a standard, like, single family flip when people were explaining multifamily to me and how they were going to force appreciation. But then when I really dove into the logistics behind it, I was like, this is insane. How on earth is this possible? Like, I'm stoked that it is, but I can literally just adjust what the income is on this property. Like, I basically now have, I won't say full control, but maybe 80 to 85% control of this asset on the direction that it can head in, and what I can actually get for rents, and what I'm doing with it as far as renovations and increasing rent, and getting creative with different other different things on maybe the expense side. So maybe if all of the water meters aren't separately metered, maybe you do some kind of utility charge back, or you separately meter them. Maybe you add that in there. I even had a conversation with a guy last week. He's putting solar panels in his properties and decreasing his electric bill. And I talked to a water conservationist company last month, and they've got special toilets that you can install in your units that like decrease your water consumption significantly. And so all of these little things add up to big numbers, which when multiplied by the cap rate, the upside is crazy. And it's ridiculous that not enough people even know about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that kind of leads me to the next question. But why do you think most people don't know about this? Maybe the term forcing appreciation, or these kind of little strategies and kind of outlook that you have on this.
So why don't more people know about like multifamily or like little intricacies inside of multifamily?
Yeah, kind of the intricacies inside of it.
I mean, it all just comes back to education. And some of it might go to the individual actually caring to educate, actually caring to continue to read books and talk to folks and learn more and be kind of that continual educational mindset. Some people are okay with like they're comfortable with what they're doing and then they just kind of stay in their comfort zone and they just keep doing what they know and what works for them. And they don't really kind of grow outside of their bubble or their box. So that might be some of it of what people don't know. And the rest of it might be that people aren't doing good enough marketing. Like maybe the individuals that are writing these books or writing these blog posts or doing these podcasts, maybe they're not getting it out to the right audience. The right audience isn't able to find it. Maybe they're not going towards the avatar that they should be going towards. Or maybe also we just got a ton of W-2 employees okay with just being W-2 employees. There's a lot of different reasons that people could not know about these things. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to you as an individual deciding whether or not you want to continue learning, whether or not you want to continue growing and be of that like always learning mindset. I actually listened to a podcast the other day. I'm gonna pull up the notes I took on it. Listened to a podcast the other day by a guy named Jim Quick, and he's got a phenomenal story. Honestly, I haven't read any of his books, but I want to now. And he basically had a traumatic brain injury as a kid, and now he's like one of the smartest like individuals that maybe he's not like on the planet, but he's just extremely intelligent from the standpoint of how quickly he can read, how many like what he can remember, like having a traumatic brain injury, and now he's got one of like the best memories in the world. Like he literally does, and at conferences that he'll do where he'll speak at, there might be 100 people in the audience. He'll have every individual say, like, stand up, introduce himself, and say their name, and then he'll go back after that and say, "This is you. This is what you do. Here's your name," and he'll like remember everything. And he says he doesn't do it to brag, but he does it to show people what's possible. And so it's stuff like that, like, holy cow, that's ridiculous. And so he gave these 10 tips for a limitless brain. I'll just go through them real quick. Tip number 1 is diet. So just like eating right. And then tip number 2 is what he called killing ants, killing automatic negative thoughts. And then 3 is exercise. 4 is brain nutrients like omega-3s and other like vitamins. 5 is having a positive peer group. 6 is having a clean environment. 7 is the correct amount of sleep. 8 is brain protection. So like falling, tripping, any kind of head jarring motions. 9 is always learning. And 10 is stress management. So the idea of creating this limitless brain and creating a mindset and a capacity to grow your brain, grow what's possible, and continue learning comes from those 10 tips to continue to expand on your knowledge. So if you have the desire to do so, the education's out there, the knowledge is out there. I don't think there's any one thing that people just can't find on YouTube or on Google or anywhere. Like everyone knows how to get a 6-pack of abs. Everyone knows what you got to do. You got to eat right and you got to work out. You got to have the right workout for your body type and the right diet for your body type. But does everyone have a 6-pack of abs? No, because no one has taken the initiative and gone through the pain to achieve that one particular thing. So that was a long-winded version of saying I think a lot of people don't know about this because they either don't want to or they just refuse to.
Yeah, it may sound cliche, but it kind of goes back to that old adage, right? You can lead a horse to water. Can't
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. That was some great insight there, Josh. Not only about multifamily, kind of a bit about what you do, but also the mindset as well. Is there anything else you haven't mentioned that you really just like to hit home?
Uh, I guess just don't quit. Like get started and then don't quit. So the getting started comes from the baby steps that we talked about earlier. You don't have to take massive action. You don't have to do something large and crazy, like go raise a ton of money or go speak at a conference with 1,000 people. Like you just got to have that one first initial conversation. You just have to create that social media page or social media post. You just have to create something, do something. It can be so small, but it's powerful, and it's going to continue moving you in the direction that you need to go to eventually get where you want to be. So then don't give up at that point. Once you begin taking these baby steps, don't get a month, 2 months, 3 months down the road and be like, well, that's not working. I haven't gotten any money and I'm not where I want to be. And that's okay. I mean, you also have to like enjoy the process and just don't give up. Just keep moving.
Keep moving. That's definitely the biggest message here. You're definitely a true testament to that. Just kind of putting one foot in front of the other, and you just keep it moving. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Josh. So maybe someone's in the Mobile market. Maybe they're in another state. They're interested in Mobile. They're interested in your story. They want to get in touch with you. Where can we find you?
So you can find me at ferraricapital.com. We've got an ebook there on the homepage you can download. It's called the Ultimate Guide to Investing in Multifamily Syndication. It's not an original title by any means, but it's just kind of the groundwork and a lot of the basics and understanding and structure of what a syndication looks like from an active side and a passive side. So if you're interested in learning more about syndications, you can check that out. We've also got a blog on our website with a ton of blog posts and different articles that you can read to continue to educate yourself. We've got a monthly newsletter that we release that's got some type of educational information, as well as kind of deal update investments that we have, and then market specifics, market data on the markets that we're interested in, which a lot of people really enjoy. And then we also got a podcast called the Creative Capital Podcast. So that's on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to this podcast or any of your other podcasts. You can check us out there. And we'll also have a couple of social media accounts. We've got Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Instagram is Ferrari Capital, and then Facebook and LinkedIn is just Josh Ferrari.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely have to check those out, Josh. It's been great kind of talking about, your experience transitioning into real estate, little nuances in the industry and kind of, just putting one foot in front of the other and learning more about you, Josh. So it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, man. I hope that I added some value to at least one of your listeners. If I could just change one person's life, it was worth it.
Absolutely. I think we did. I know that someone's going to get something out of this message, and it's been great.
Thanks so much for having me.
Have a good one.